Hey everybody, it's Jason Creo. You're watching The Lawn Care Life. Today I want to talk to you about mowing lawns and talk to you specifically about how high you should be mowing your grass. We're going to talk about different grass types. I'm going to show you the grass types and talk to you about mowing height. Let's get started right now. All right, I'm sure some of you that mow grass for a living know the conversations you get. One customer wants you to mow it short. One person wants you to mow it, tall, and some of them want it cut weekly, some bi-weekly, some real mow theirs every day. I mean, so there's just a lot of opinions out there about grass. But I want to show you, I deal with warm season grass. I'm in Alabama, so I'm going to show you Bermuda, Centipede, St. Augustine, and Zoysia today. And then we can talk about cool season grasses and mowing heights, and then talk to you about just some of the basics of mowing grass. Now, this is probably not a great example because I can see a little discoloration in this yard. But when I'm looking at grass, let me find a little bit nicer looking area. So for mowing lawns, a couple things to keep in mind. I mean, you may have heard it said, and it's sort of the rule of thumb, you don't mow more than a third of the grass blade off at a time. So what that means is you got to figure out how fast the grass is growing and how willing you are to mow it frequently, because some people want their grass cut really short, but they're not willing to mow it very often or to pay somebody to come. So just realistic to mow your grass every 2 weeks with a Bermuda lawn or a lot of different kind of grasses, to be honest with you, during the peak growing season with fertilizer is probably not going to work out so good. I see some of these cool season lawns, like sometimes we'll overseed our lawn with ryegrass, and when it gets into the springtime, the ryegrass goes crazy, and I literally think you could mow it every other day. So if you want to go 2 weeks and mow it, it's just not enough during peak growing season. So on Bermuda grass, it loves hot weather, and when it's been fertilized, can you mow it every 2 weeks? Sure you can. Are you gonna be able to keep it at an inch or inch and a half? Most likely not, without causing some serious scalp marks on the lawn. So let's start with Bermuda. We'll work our way through the grass types and talk about recommendations on mowing heights. So my Bermuda lawn, I like to mow at an inch and a half, and that's the lowest setting my mower will go. Now, if let's just say that I'm out of town for 2 weeks and I come back and it's grown from an inch and a half to 3 inches, then you got a couple options at that point. You can either cut it back down to an inch and a half, which may which would violate the third of the grass blade rule, and it may cause some discoloration. But by doing that, you got it back down to your desired height, and I'm okay doing that. That's probably the route I would go, and I'm okay if it turns brown, because I think it'll bounce back pretty quickly. Or if you skip a couple weeks, you can say, well, can't keep it an inch and a half anymore, and so I'm gonna raise it. It's got up to 3 inches, so I'm gonna cut it at 2 1/4, something like that. Well, and that's fine. And for people that mow their grass every 2 weeks, like a Bermuda lawn, for instance, what I tell them, I say, listen, start off in the spring, maybe, and again, I'm basing this off my time frame here in Alabama, but let's say I was gonna do the first cut late March, and all basically doing at that point is just mowing dormant grass. So what I'll do is I will cut that dormant grass, and I'm gonna try to, let's say you had let it get up to 3 1/2 inches the following fall in the last cut of the year. So what I'll do is I'm trying to take it down mostly to my desired level. So if my desired level is at 3 1/2, my desired level, I'm wanting to get it to an inch and a half, I may cut it to 2 1/4 that first cut. And you got stuff going everywhere, and if you have the ability to bag, to me that would be the time to bag, because you've got you're trying to get rid of all that dormant grass clippings. Well, then on the second cut, let's say you come back 2 weeks later, I mean, the actual Bermuda grass is barely growing. You'd be in early April at that point. You can go ahead and take it on down further. Now you can do that on the first cut. I'm just trying to save you a little bit of work, because if you're taking it from 3 1/2 all the way to 1 1/2 inches, that's going to be a lot of grass clippings. It's just dormant stuff. And what that does is let the sunlight get down and start warming the soil, and you're probably going to have a greener lawn than your neighbor who didn't decide to mow their grass until on into April. Mowing it early is one of the ways that you can make it green up quickly. That's my strategy with Bermuda. Now, if again, I like to, once I get it down to 1.5 inches, I like to mow it at 1.5 inches the whole time. I mean, I might start mowing it every 2 weeks because it's barely growing in April. As I get into May, I'm going weekly. And then as I get into the summer, into June, July, August with fertilizer, I'm either going to use a growth regulator, which is what I use, a product called Podium, and that allows me to keep it low without having to mow it so often, or you're going to have to mow it about every 4 or 5 days to keep it 1.5 inches. If you don't want to mow that often, then you have to gradually raise your blade, your mowing blade, to keep from scalping it. And then when you get toward the end of the year, get to October or so, and you get tired of mowing, then I think if you let it get up a little bit higher, I try to scalp it back down on that last cut of the year. It does a couple things. One, it tells the grass, I don't want to mow you anymore this year, and it kind of stunts it and sends it into dormancy, or stunts it enough until we get cold weather, it sends it into dormancy. And then two, it leaves it where there's not so many grass clippings and dormant grass that you'll have to deal with the following spring. So anyway, that's the Bermuda grass plan. All right, I'm gonna walk out here and show you some centipede grass. I've got some centipede in my house. It's out by the road, so maybe some cars, hopefully not too many. But I just want to show you what centipede is in case you're wondering, and then we'll talk about mowing centipede grass. So here's some centipede. Now this is a really bad example because this has not been mowed much at all. To be honest, I hardly ever mow this. Maybe I can come over and look at my neighbor's real quick. He does a lot better job of keeping his, because mine's kind of not really much of my yard. But anyway, you can see this centipede. And this is mowed about, I think he gets out here and mows about once a week. Now, centipede, you may have heard people describe it as a lazy man's grass. Yes, in some ways I get their point. What they're saying is, if you do nothing to your centipede, it can still look decent. But I would say that doing nothing, if all you do is just mow it once a week and mow it really low. So I would like to go on my centipede, I mow it again 1.5 inches. If you might even go down to 1 inch if you can do that. And by the way, backtracking a little bit to Bermuda, I mean, can you real mow it at 1/2 inch? Of course you can. Can you grow it at 5 inches? Of course you can. If you're not gonna water and it gets hot and dry, you might wanna, leave it a little bit longer, because leaving it short is gonna make it need a little bit more water to stay green. So with centipede, I've seen some that have almost nothing done to them. No fertilization, no weed control, but they simply mow it regularly and they mow it low, and they do look pretty well. So I would recommend mowing it. I've heard people say, hey, my centipede's 4 inches and it looks great. I'm not saying it can't look great longer, but it seems to me that ones that I take care of, when the customer mows regularly and keeps it short, that it looks better. So I'm gonna recommend 1.5 inches if I had it. And I will say this, centipede, I feel like you can go a couple of weeks in between mowings and cut it down to 1.5 inches, and it doesn't seem to cause it to scalp it or turn it brown like Bermuda does or like Zoysia. St. Augustine area, I'm trying to get it to grow in. Last summer I just put some pieces of St. Augustine out, and you can see it's actually doing fairly well. It's starting to really spread. You can see where it's running because I just threw it out here on the ground. You can see I didn't cover it solid. I just threw a piece there, piece there, piece there. So it's doing okay. I expect it to fill in, most of the way this summer. It may not fill all the way in, but there's this tree, and Bermuda grass wasn't going to grow here, and I thought this would give me a chance to mess with a little bit of St. Augustine in this area. So you see my St. Augustine. One of the things I like about it's definitely much more shade tolerant than Bermuda grass, and more than centipede as well. But I use that Podium for my growth regulator, and St. Augustine, it's a very low rate, so it's a lot cheaper. I think it's like 16 ounces per acre on Bermuda. On St. Augustine, it's like 6 maybe. I forget exactly. I had to check the label, but so you can use the growth regulator, and it can actually help it to not to grow as fast. But anyway, on the mowing height, St. Augustine, I've been mowing mine at 4 inches. So again, you don't want to cut off more than 1/3 of the blade of grass. Mowing regularly, so weekly on almost any grass type, is just going to be better than mowing bi-weekly. But let's say you let it get up to 5 inches, you mow it down to 4. It's kind of what I've been doing. But will it adapt to being mowed shorter? Yes, it will. But you don't want to go in there with it being 5 inches and cut it down to 2, because you're really going to stress the grass out. So anyway, I like to leave mine nice and tall, and I don't have much St. Augustine to speak of at the moment, but I'm picturing, you know, maybe by the next year that this is all going to be nice and lush St. Augustine grass over here. Something I just kind of like grass, so I like to deal with different kinds of grass, so it'll give me something to experiment with some St. Augustine fertilizer and weed control in this area. Now here's my Zoysia lawn, and I've got Zoysia, and it's going to depend on which type you have. Different ones are going to be tolerate different mowing heights, but I'm mowing this at 3 inches. Now you can go lower. I've kind of let it get a little bit taller, so if I were to mow it lower now, I'd probably stress it out just a little bit, but I think it looks great at 3 inches, and you know, just excited with the way it's looking. Now I've seen Palisade Zoysia is one that I think can actually be real mowed at a 1/2 inch. Probably gonna need, you know, a good bit of water if you do that. But to me, you know, when I see like Emerald Zoysias, E52, I would say that 2.5 to 3 inch range. I'm gonna typically let it grow out a little bit longer than my Bermuda grass. So, you know, in this situation, I mow the Bermuda, which is my primary grass type, 1.5 inches. Then I go 3 inches on this little patch of Zoysia. I just got 2 pallets here. It's underneath these big crepe myrtle trees, so the Bermuda wasn't going to do very well here. And then on the St. Augustine, I go to 4 inches. I just put it in some real shady areas where I was wanting to see if I could get it to spread kind of fast. And then out by the road, that's just some Centipede that was already there. I didn't plant that, but if I owned my Centipede, I would mow that at 1.5 inches as well. And I have had a couple of houses that I've owned that both had Centipede lawns, and again, I mow them frequently and short. Now those of you got experience with the cool season grasses, maybe you can chime in the comments, but it seems to me, again, I've seen the cool season grasses in the springtime, they are growing so fast, you know, so frequently mowing it kind of tall. So I'm going to think somewhere in that 3 to 4 inch range, and I know people even mow them taller than that. Now I know, you may say, well, I mow it short. I realize that on baseball fields and things like that, they're able to keep their cool season grasses shorter than 4 inches. But for homeowners, and from what I've seen, it seems like that 3 to 4 inch range is good. Again, the principle here is you got to know how often you're going to mow the grass, because if you're going to let it get up to 8 inches and then scalp it back down to 3, you may stress it out a little bit. Or if you're not going to water it and it's super hot, then you may want to leave it a little bit longer, because like I said, I don't want to be cutting my Bermuda at 1.5 inches with no water, or definitely my Zoysia. Bermuda, I mean, it would probably just turn it a little bit brown, but it would come back. The Zoysia, you know, you stress it out with some heat, cutting it real short, you know, it's not going to bounce back too fast from drought damage. So understand your watering habits, if you're willing to water, if you're willing to mow more often, and hopefully these mowing recommendations have helped you. Leave your suggestions in the comments. Maybe you have different thoughts, or from your own experience. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I would encourage you to subscribe if you hadn't done so. And if you're in the lawn business or thinking about getting in the lawn business, whether weed control, mowing, mosquitoes, whatever, I got a lot of resources at lawncarelife.com. You can go over there and check those out. Appreciate you watching. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.